The printing and the postage for that original mailing that never went anywhere?
Certainly probably about a third of the residents received theirs, but it costs us about $3,200 for the first mailing and about $900 for the postcard.
Yeah, that we shouldn't have to print. Yeah. Yeah, there should be compensation.
Maybe, is there a form? I thought there was a form that could be completed to at least start a claim.
You know what, I think there might be. What I did was you could have a form, you can email, or you can call. I wanted to call because I just wanted to call, and I guess we'll have to do that. I did try though. I mean, surprised at the gym.
The Scaldo?
He has not tried to do that. He called and left messages.
He also told you that he was investigating it, right?
He did say, originally he did say that, but then he didn't get in there, and then I've not heard anything else.
And it's my understanding that the village is taking an informal approach at this point in the hopes that the post office would acknowledge exactly what you're saying, Rita, that this is very unjust, and that they would speed it along and give us our money back or credit or whatever the compromise would be. And that was the route we were going. But yes, you are correct, trustee, that there is a formal process, and I think if you just let me know when you want to begin that formal process, we can do that and file a claim.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay. I'll close the floor to public comment, and I'm just going to ask out of courtesy for those of us that are working the St. Christopher Fiesta, please, let's try to stay on track tonight and make this an efficient meeting. So, Trustee Grace.
Tomorrow, I will be at the CalSeg Enterprise Zone meeting representing the village at 11:30, and then we have Keep Midlothian Beautiful at 2:30, and we have the Natalie Creek Trail Steering Committee meeting at 4. A number of you are on all those committees, so I'll see you all tomorrow, and that's all I have.
Thank you, ma'am. Trustee Ivan.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to discuss, or if anybody has any discussions about the appropriations ordinance for fiscal year 2019 to 2022 that I would like to have on the agenda for approval on next week's board meeting. Anybody have anything additional that they want to add to?
Well, I actually I want to review and compare it to last year, so if I have any questions, I will email them.
All right, then. I'd like to have then the ordinance on the agenda, consent agenda for next week. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you, sir. Trustee Gillis.
I have nothing this evening, Mayor.
Trustee Cavney.
Thank you, Mayor. Couple things. I sent everybody an email and some information with regards to a request from T-Mobile. T-Mobile, as you know, we're working towards entering into an agreement with T-Mobile for them to put possibly some antennas to our water tower. And they have, the T-Mobile representatives have met with Joe Sperry and with our engineer Tom from Robinson, and have walked the location to identify and make sure that there's enough space for what they need. And they've agreed to use the Verizon document as a template, and the T-Mobile rep contacted me last week. He noticed that in the Verizon document, the term of the Verizon document, initial term is 10 years with 4 or 5-year extensions, and then after the last extension, there's an opportunity for one more 5-year extension. T-Mobile came back and asked if the village would entertain a 20-year initial term. So I sent the information to all of you for you to review. I included a copy of the Verizon document so you can see the language. I'm trying to open it now. So I'm just wondering if you have any questions or comments on it. And let's see.
I think the 20 years is standard.
To be honest with you, Mayor, I don't know if it's standard or not. I have no
Well,
idea.
maybe not standard, but that's what we're going with. They just wanted to be even with Verizon, that's all, right?
No. Verizon's initial term is 10 years. They're asking for an initial term of 20.
I read it wrong. I thought they wanted 3 additional 5-year.
No.
Each one.
The overall term with all the extensions typically is 30 to 35 years. That is typical. But in this case, if you look in paragraph 3A, it says that the initial term will be for 120 months. Okay, so that's 10 years. Then you go down to section 4. Section 4 is the extensions. There will be 3 additional 5-year terms, and they're automatic. And it says unless either party terminates at the end of the then current term. And that's the other language they didn't like. They didn't like the fact that either party has the right to terminate. Well, after a 10 or 20-year term, if it's not working out for us, then we don't want them on our, if we're going to keep that language in, I think that's what made them nervous, was the fact that the initial term was 10 years, and then after every 5-year extension, either party has the right to terminate. So that's why he was asking for a 20-year term. And then paragraph 6 is the language for that fourth 5-year term, the final fourth 5-year term. And then we would have to renegotiate again. So I just wanted to bring it to the board and, get your feeling for what you feel about. Do we want to do a 20-year term? Would you rather do a 15-year term?
I think 20 is fine, but we still want the opportunity to get out after every 5 years.
Right, but the initial term will be for 20 years with no option to get out unless there's a default. So that's the differential here. The initial term for Verizon is 10 years. Nobody gets out of it unless there's the village can't get out of it unless there's a default. I would have to go back and read. I'm pretty sure both parties are stuck with the 10-year. Oh, no, there is an annual termination in paragraph 12. Annual termination, notwithstanding anything, and this is paragraph 12, notwithstanding anything to the contrary, provided lessee is not in default hereunder, beyond any applicable cure period, lessee shall have the right to terminate this agreement upon an annual anniversary of commencement, provided that 6 months prior given to the lessee. So Verizon has an out every single year. But that's why that's why we kept the language in paragraph 4. Because unless either party terminates at the end of the then current term. So we're going from 10 years to 20 years.
I think the lesson is that if it's an entity that is unsure about their ability to deliver and want the space over time, what can develop is that we give long-term leases that lock in their rate that's favorable to them. But if they fold or if they want to get out, then they don't pay. They force the situation that the village had with Trustee Cageman. We end up renegotiating our side,
Right.
but we have no ability to renegotiate a higher rate if the market changes.
Right.
So,
I mean, I'm not advocating for the 20 years,
Right.
but they asked the question, so I had to bring it to the board and find out, what the board's pleasure was. I'm kind of agreeing with you in that regard. I don't know that I would want to go 20 years without the village having it out.
I am comfortable with the 10.
You're comfortable with 10?
10 sounds good.
Jerry, Karen?
I think
Sandy?
10 sounds reasonable.
Okay. Just so you know, there's a possibility that T-Mobile may decide to step away from the transaction then, because they really want 20 years. So they may ask us to come back and give up that language in paragraph 4 that says either party can terminate or, not go forward. So I don't know how the board feels about that either.
Well, we could do that 10-year and then automatically have it reinstate itself every year after?
Well, it's
something
kind of
like
like, the way the extensions work is that they're evergreen clauses. So kind of, similar to an evergreen clause is in that when we reach the 5-year extension, we renew upon the same terms. So the same rent keeps rolling with the 2.5 or 3-year bump, 2.5 or 3% bump, whatever it is. So I think it's 3% bump every year. So that'll keep rolling and for 3 more extensions. At the end of that, 6 months or a year before the end of that final 3rd extension, we can negotiate for another extension, but I think we can negotiate the terms at that point. So the way the document is set up is, right now for Verizon, it's a 10-year term, and then after the initial 10 years, it will renew for 5 years, 3 more times, but at the same terms, unless either party decides that they want to not renew. And if the market really, really changes to the point where it's better for the village not to renew, and we say, well, we're not going to renew unless you want to renegotiate, then, they can take their equipment down and go somewhere else. So.
I think that's exactly why. It probably works better for that, because what we've learned is that the danger to us is that T-Mobile goes under, or someone buys them out, and then they come back to us and say, well, we're going to go unless you renegotiate the lease. And as you see, we had to do that. We had to make a decision as to whether we're going to get no money or have a reduced lease.
Right.
Whereas with the long-term lease, they get their bargain deal. If the market changes and it goes up, they're locked in. So they're allowed, so in effect, the longer-term lease allows them to renegotiate, but not us.
Correct. Okay, so what I'm hearing from the board is everybody is good with the 10-year term, the way the Verizon lease is set up, and that's the way we want to go forward with all of our potential other leases for this water tower. We don't want to entertain a different term structure. Okay, very good. Next item is the adoption of the new plumbing code. There should have been 2 attachments. One was the actual ordinance itself. The other attachment was the letter that Superintendent Weinert received from the Illinois Department of Public Health. The Illinois Department of Public Health is still in the process of reviewing the ordinance, so what they're recommending is that we can go ahead and adopt our ordinance the way it is, but at some point down the road, before the next go-around, if Illinois changes the Illinois code, then we would have to just revise our ordinance to accept that revision. So if the board does not have any issues or problem with that, I would like to have...
I just have one correction. I didn't catch it earlier. Under number 7.
Wait, is this somewhere in the ordinance?
Page 3 in the ordinance. Under number 7, you have 2 Fs.
Page 3, number 7. Wait, number 7, which, 2 Fs, I see, in the outline. It should be E, F, G.
Yeah.
Lead solder should be G. Got that, Maria? Thank you. Okay. So other than that little revision, if the board doesn't have any other questions or issues, I'd like to add this ordinance to the consent agenda for next week for approval. Okay, I got, oh, shoot. Okay. What happened to my annotations? I don't know what's going on here. I had, all right, Alan, I had notes, and now they're not there. See, this is,
It's on Karen.
right. I'm trying to go to myself. Now, what did you do?
I just redid it because it wasn't moving for you yet. It should be on here. It's still on hers.
Okay, hold on, but I think my notes came back. Okay. All right. 2 notes. Number 1, as you know, the Fall Fest is right around the corner at the end of October. This year's theme is going to be Year of the Superhero. So I have already started assembling some of my scarecrow projects. So I'm going to be sending out an email to the village board and staff and all the committees and challenging everybody to another scarecrow throwdown. So I just wanted to make everybody aware of it. Also would like to ask again this year for a budget. Last year, I think I asked, the last couple of years I asked for 500. I'd like to ask for 700 this year just in case. We've got a couple extra ideas of a few craft things that we want to do with the kids. Now, if I'm not mistaken, I don't think we've even turned in any receipts for reimbursement for the last couple of years, so I have no idea if any of the budget money for the Fall Fest was even used. And if it was, I'm sure it was a minuscule amount. But as a reminder, I did schedule, the village is going to work together with the Park District, the library, and the VFW, and we're going to host 2 scarecrow building nights, and the VFW agreed to let us use their party room. It's going to be, I think it's Thursday, October 3rd, in the early evening, like from 6 to 8, and then on Sunday, October 6th, from 2 to 4. I'll double check those times. So we're going to invite, all the families and kids in the neighborhood, in the village, to come over, and we'll help them build scarecrows. So we may need to have some, extra supplies on hand. So I would like to ask for a $700 budget, and we can put that on the consent agenda if nobody has any questions or comments or concerns about that. One other thing, and I'll make this short since we want to keep the meeting moving along, and maybe we could discuss it again next week, is the rain garden maintenance. I was having a conversation again with Helen with regards to the rain garden maintenance, and, her comment to me was that, the rain garden doesn't really bloom. Most of what's blooming now, earlier in June, what bloomed were some yellow coreopsis flowers and some other purplish blue flower that I don't remember the name of, and those are flowers that were seeded flowers or plugs, I don't know, but those are original plantings in the rain garden. Everything else that has bloomed has been plants that Team Midlothian and the Blue Other Volunteers have planted. So I reminded Helen that, in my conversations with Julia Plum, the rain garden is performing the way it's intended to. This is not a botanical rain garden, it's a prairie rain garden, and whatever the seed mix was and whatever the plant plug mix was, I have no idea what it was. The items that were planted there are growing and blooming as they should. And if it's not blooming as one would expect, it's because it's not supposed to bloom. It's just blooming the way it is. So that brings me to the Keystone Rain Garden. When I had attended the bid opening, just for my own edification, because I had never been to one of those before, and having conversation with the engineer, I had asked if it would be possible, instead of doing a seeded garden, if we could build that garden with mature plants and plugs, because the concern was that I don't really think it's a good idea to have the Keystone Rain Garden be a prairie-style rain garden, because it's not going to be big enough. It's going to be a long, skinny strip. The problem with the rain garden now is that it doesn't bloom. It's just tall greenery, and people are going to drive by and think it's a bunch of weeds. They're not going to realize that it's a prairie-style rain garden, but the problem is it's going to be about 125 feet long, because that's the depth of the lot, and I'm not sure what the width is. It might be 3 or 4 or 5 feet wide. If I recall correctly from the documentation, I think it's about 165 square feet, so it's not very big. Our current rain garden over here is 5,000 square feet. So I had, in my conversation with Helen, we had talked about, just putting in a couple of items, like one grass and maybe black-eyed Susans, or maybe adding a third plant so that we have 3 plants in there to give it a little bit of color. But the idea was to just put 3 in there, so when it grows, whoever's going to be responsible for maintaining it, if it's a village employee, it's going to be easy for them to identify 3 plants versus a whole slew of different seeded plants. And I know it's going to be a little bit more expensive, but an idea I had, just like we reached out to the neighborhood and we asked people for donations for different things, there are plenty of folks in the neighborhood that, have beautiful gardens, who have shared plants with us before, we could put a call out to the residents and ask if anybody has cone plants to share, black-eyed Susans to share, and then maybe all we need to buy are the grass plants.
Well,
So,
we have to follow the IGA.
I understand that, Karen, but does the IGA specify that it has
And
to be
we have to
seeded?
pay prevailing wage.
Karen, I understand all of that, and I'm not
And I-
suggesting, wait, let me finish, please. I'm not suggesting that we go against the IGA. When I brought that idea up to the engineer, he thought it was a very good idea. My suggestion is, we call the engineer tomorrow, we talk to him about it, I don't know what the plan is, I don't know. I know that after that bid opening, there was only one bid and it was way too expensive, so the agreement was that it was going to go out to bid again, and then we were going to bid the parking lot separate from the rain garden.
Right.
So my suggestion to the engineer was that when he prepared the bid documents, that the bid document asks anybody who's going to provide a bid to give, that there's two different scopes of work. One for seeds and plant plugs, and the other one for, three things: mature grass or grass plugs and the other flowers. And if the IGA will allow us to plant donated plants, I don't see what the harm in that would be, because this is not an 80-20 grant. It's almost like a 50-50 grant, and that's 50% of this is being paid for by the village, right? At least 45% of it.
To be determined when the bid comes in.
What do you mean to be determined?
It's going to depend on what the bid is, and I don't have the IGA in front of me.
Right.
Okay.
My recollection when we got the letter from MWRD was that this was not going to be an 80-20 grant. This
No,
was
it's not an
like a
80-20.
55-45, so the village has to come up with a lot of money. So if we're allowed to do in-kind, like if we're allowed to use Public Works to do some of the in-kind work, I don't see the harm in getting donated plants for this.
So we might be able to scale back on the size of the rain garden, or what we put out for bid, and then try to fill in after.
I thought that the size of the rain garden was set. The rain
No,
garden
it
had to be a
was
certain size.
Correct.
Right.
But I'm talking about scaling back the number of plants that
Right.
go in, okay?
Yeah, but I just think that would be a horrible idea for the village to seed that space, because it's not going to bloom. It's not, and in addition to that, we could see that if you go out there and look, a couple years ago, we put a huge border of mulch around that thing. The border of mulch was at least 3 feet wide. There's no mulch border anymore. All of those plants in that rain garden have crept into the mulch. So the same thing would happen if we used seed over in that area. Whenever those seeded items reseed themselves, it's going to be blown in the wind and landing in all the neighbors' yards, and they're not going to be happy about it.
Well, we did have and this was trying to remember when, after the bid opening, we did have a conference call with MWRD about it. And because we said we're going to have to, and they said if you only got one bid, go rebid the project, split it into two. But they actually suggested, John Watson from MWRD suggested just seeds. They tend to be stronger when they go mature.
Right, but
So-
John Watson's not the one who's going to be pulling the weeds out
I
of the
know, but
seeds.
John
Karen.
Watson John Watson is an engineer at MWRD.
Okay, so we need to find
Okay,
out.
but he's an engineer, he's not a garden expert. So if we need to have another conversation with MWRD to explain our circumstances, then we need to do that. But I'm strongly recommending that we do not seed that area.
Okay.
It's right in the middle of a residential neighborhood, and it's going to wreak havoc.
All right, so we need to find out if the IGA allows for us to plant home. Well, you said you have to wait till it goes out to bid, so.
Well,
No, I think before it goes out to bid, we need
We
to
have
know
to
what we
make-
can do so we can redo.
we can make
so
the
rewrite bid.
determination.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah,
Perfect.
so,
Okay. Thank you.
okay, that's all I have.
Trustee Kilby.
Nothing here.
Trustee Crowley.
Just a couple of things tonight. Sir, I'm going to deviate a little bit and just kind of go out of order to get things moving. The first thing I'd like to talk about on my agenda is I'd like to make a motion to approve the hiring of the new full-time officer to the police department.
A second?
Okay. We have a first and a second. Is there any discussion? Roll call.
Trustee Crowley?
Aye.
Trustee Ivan?
Aye.
Trustee Kavney?
Aye.
Trustee Gillis?
Aye.
Trustee Killy?
Aye.
Trustee Kreis?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Second thing, I just want to do a quick, we have a number of IT updates, but I can hold some of those off for next week. But this week, I do just want to give a couple updates to the board. We had an IT meeting on Monday. Our projected date to switch over to fiber and the new phone system is next Thursday, the 25th and the 26th. Both fiber and the new phone system will go up at the same time. Proven will be on site for training and any issues, and they'll go department to department like we did with the printers to ensure training. All the department heads were at the meeting and are aware of this and are going to make sure their employees are aware. Next, the server, which everybody's, we've all been waiting for. Once fiber goes in and the phones are online, Proven has received most of the components for the new server project. You can read that both. Once they're sure everything's up and running properly with the phones and the fiber, we expect that the server project will be completed within 4 weeks. So we anticipate by September 1st, our new server will be installed and completely functioning. So those of you who have been waiting to add new things or create new databases, that's our projection. One last thing about IT. We were again told by Proven at our IT meeting that Windows 7, the official die date for Windows 7 is January 14th, 2020. We're in the process of getting a list of all the computers that are affected, that will still be affected in the village. As soon as I have that, I'll be sending it to all the department heads so that they can make arrangements to do what they need to do, because Windows 7 will no longer be operating after January 14th. National Night Out, I can talk. I did send an email today to everybody. Hopefully everybody got it. I sent it from my phone, and sometimes that doesn't work properly. Inviting all of the trustees to include all of the committees and their departments in National Night Out. So I'll talk a little bit more about that next week. And the only other two things on my agenda, sir, are for executive session.
Thank you, ma'am. Attorney Valdez?
Just that the board received another copy of, hopefully a final revision of the registration of default mortgage and vacant property ordinance for discussion. Most of the changes were cosmetic. There's no other input. It'll be up for the board's approval. And
So can we get that on the agenda for next week to approve it?
Yeah, I sent just a short while ago one more email to you and Maria. Nick had found a missing word, and I sent you guys an email about this.
yeah, the changes that trustee Caveney sent in her red line are valid and fine with me. And I would just say that thanks to trustee Caveney for going through this. She led the review of this ordinance. Because of that, any review that I had was able to be fit in within the retainer, and so most of the work that was done by trustee Caveney, and there was no additional cost to the village for the adoption of this ordinance.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, sir. I have nothing for council.
I just have one item, and that is that I did send to the board on Monday a copy of our semi-annual resolution and some executive session minutes. I realize there was a lot of reading there, but if anyone has any questions about those or any concerns, please let me know. Otherwise, I'd like to have it on the agenda for next week. That's all I have.
I just have one, there's a lot to read, and, I read them all. So I don't know that I'll have time to read them all by
Okay.
next week, and I'll let you know how.
Would you just let me know?
I will let you know.
We'll take
how-
them off.
I mean, I don't know if everybody else is going
It's
to,
a lot.
how long it's going to take everybody else to read them, but it is a lot.
Understand. But we can easily, I'm happy to defer to them, we do not get to it.
No,
Because know you always read all of them.
I do. Maria loves it when she gets the emails. but I do want to read them.
Okay.
Sorry,
No, that's fine.
it's my job to read them, so.
Yes, it is.
I don't know if anybody else needs any extra time to read them, but I'll go as fast as I can.
That's all I have.
At this time, I'm looking for a motion to adjourn to closed session to discuss the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of a specific employee of the public body.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? There will be action,
Yes.
there may be action
There may be action.
following closed session. Okay, at this time, I'm looking for a motion to return to open session.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We are in open session. It is 7:46 PM. Trustee Crowley.
Thank you, sir. I'd like to make a motion to extend offer of employment to the part-time police clerk. I'll second.
That's correct. Now you got me confused. All right, we have a motion and a second. Yeah, any discussion? Roll call, please.
Trustee Crowley.
Aye.
Trustee Kagan.
Aye.
Trustee Gillis.
Aye.
Trustee Ivan.
Aye.
Trustee Killen. Trustee Kreis.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you, sir. Seeing there's no further business coming before the board, I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
I'll make the
I'll make the
motion.
motion.
All in favor?
Aye.